Continuing on in Luke 14. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and his children, his brothers and his sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. And anyone who does not carry his cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." It doesn't mean you actually have to hate your brother. In fact, he doesn't want you to hate your brother, okay? The point being made here is that Jesus has to be first. If you have to make a choice between Jesus and your brother or your father or your mother or your wife or your children, Jesus has to be number one. And if you're not able to carry your cross, which means, die, because that's what the cross leads to, is death, you can't be his disciple. It has to be a commitment. A number one lifelong commitment. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, saying, "This fellow began to build, but he wasn't able to finish." That happens. A number of years ago, this is 2024, there was a church in my town, not the one I go to, but another one, that started building a new, we're in a kind of a recession period today in the Western church, where churches are contracting and shrinking and all that as people get disillusioned with church and fall away from the faith, or at least fall away from their leaders. But 20 years ago or so, at the end of the last century, the 90s, 80s, 90s, and into the early part of the 2000s, that was the opposite. The church was expanding too much, honestly, as I have said. I think a lot of that expansion was fake, not real. There was not real fruit being born, and not real good fruit being grown, and so it turned rotten eventually. But I remember in that time period, or maybe just a little bit after, there was a church in my town, not the one I went to, but a church in my town that bought a new territory. Okay, they were going to move, not far, they were just going to go a few streets over, and they bought a new territory, and they started a new building, and they did more than the foundation. They put up some walls. In the foundation, they put up some walls, and they ran out of money. Now, I think eventually they finished that building. If I remember correctly, I think someone eventually gave them a grant to finish it. But for a long time, several years, a couple of years at least, that building sat half finished because they ran out of money to finish it. They did not plan out their building, for the cost of their building project properly before they got started, and it was a source of embarrassment. I mocked them for it. Okay. I laughed at them for it. Or suppose the king is about to go to war against another king. Will he not first sit down and consider whether he is able, with 10,000 men, to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off, and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. You cannot, in the end, defeat God. You can go about your own way, and God will let you do that. You'll bear the consequences of that decision, either in this life or the next. But God won't make you be his disciple, but in the end, you're not going to be able to beat him. A king with 10,000 could potentially beat a king with 20,000. There have been lots of examples in history where the smaller army did defeat the larger army, whether they had better fighters, more battle experience, better trained soldiers, or they had a terrain advantage, like they knew the terrain better and used that to their advantage, or it was a total fluke, and maybe in some cases, maybe they struck a killing blow against the enemy captain or general or king very early, and that demoralized the other. Israel itself frequently defeated armies that were much bigger than them with God's help. So simply having a smaller army doesn't inherently mean you're going to lose. But none of us can fight against God and win. Eventually, we can put up a fight as long as we want to, or at least as long as he allows us to. But eventually, we're going to lose. That is not a fight that we can win. As much as that we may want to, and as annoyed as we may be about that reality, that is not a fight that we can win. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? Another teaching from the Sermon on the Mount, transplanted somewhere else in Luke's Gospel. It is fit for neither the soil nor for the manure pile. It's just thrown out. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Now the tax collectors and the sinners were all gathering around to hear him. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." He's not supposed to do that. It goes like that whole table fellowship idea. He's not supposed to have table fellowship with these people. Yeah. Luke 15. Now the tax collectors and the sinners, the bad guys, the bad people, the cast out, the ones who weren't supposed to be saved, were all gathering around to hear him. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." He's not supposed to do that. That goes back to the table fellowship idea that we mentioned in the previous videos. Who you eat with. Who you eat with indicates who you have fellowship with. Who you open your house to. Who you allow to come in for your nightly banquets and your dinners and your feasts. And it says a lot about the company you keep and who you consider to be your neighbor, your fellows. Then Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my lost sheep." I tell you that in the same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who do not need to repent. And everyone needs to repent of something. But you can easily put yourself in a position where you don't think you need to repent of anything. I was that way. I had a hard time with that for a long time in my life. I was someone, don't know if I would consider myself to be a bit of Pharisee per se, because I wasn't an activist like the Pharisees actually were, but I had a hard time, growing up in church, going to a Bible school. I went to a Christian school until I was in 8th grade, but went to church all my life. Never got in any serious trouble. Believed the Bible, like I never didn't believe it. I always did. It was difficult for me for a long time to understand that. It was hard. Okay, I would have been in that category of righteous people who don't need to repent, or who don't quite see the need for them to repent. And that's what these people were like. It can be difficult when you're in that position. Now, I did eventually have my broken moment, like I said before, but it was a long time coming. It wasn't until I was in my late 20s that I finally started to really get it. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Does she not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my lost coin." In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons." Now, this is an old Billy Graham lesson right here. I can never hear this story without thinking of Billy Graham. I can never even hear that line, "There was a man who had 2 sons," because that's how he ended all of his rallies, all of his, whatever you call them, sermons, I guess. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one, now he misinterpreted a lot of this parable, but we'll get to that as we go through. The younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Now the very fact that he's going to his father while his father is still alive and demanding his share of the estate while his father still lives is an insult to his father. Now, he's the younger son, so he's going to get less than the older one. Okay, there's two of them. The older one is going to get more. The older one is going to get twice as much as the younger one is going to get, actually. The younger one doesn't want to wait. He wants what's coming to him, and he wants it now, which is actually an insult to his father. But the father doesn't complain, apparently. He doesn't say he complained. He goes ahead and gives it to him. Everything the father has left will go to his older son, his remaining son. So the younger one has gotten what he wanted, and now he's gone. Well, he's going to be gone here in a moment at least. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. People do that. That's not just figurative or metaphorical or parabolic or whatever. Lots of people really do that. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he has no money left with which to buy food or anything. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. So he's out in Gentile territory and unclean territory, and he is now feeding an unclean animal. Pigs are probably the most unclean animal. It doesn't get more unclean than pigs. Of all the unclean animals, pigs might be the worst. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything, so he's hungry. He's eating whatever scraps he can sneak in between people watching him. When he came to his senses, and I don't know how long it took, a month, a week, a year, 2 years, I don't know. People can endure a lot before they finally come to their senses. People can wallow around in the muck and the filth a long time before they finally come to their senses. But he did eventually come to his senses. He said, "How many of my father's hired men have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired men.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him." So yes, the father was watching for his son. That's an often commented upon point of this parable. But the father did not chase after his son. The father did not stop his son from leaving, at least not that it says here. And he did not chase after him when he was afraid he might be in trouble. The father waited until the son came back on his own. And he was watching for him for when he would do that. And he ran to embrace him when he did do that. But he did not interfere with his son's self-destructive choices. He gave him the money when the son demanded it. He did not stop the son from leaving, and he did not chase after the son while the son was out in wild living. But he did run to embrace him when the son came back. And he did watch for him for when that would happen. The son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." So he was willing to repent. He didn't just think about doing it, he did it. He came back and he said what he resolved in his mind that he was going to say. So he did not even though the father is throwing himself on him and kissing him, he did not throw himself to his father in the same way. He was committed to becoming his father's hired man instead of his son. But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet." He must have been barefoot coming back. "Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead, and he is alive again. He was lost, and now he is found." So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. Now that's it for the younger son. We don't see him again. His role in the story is over. Now back to the older son, the one who was there the whole time, was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has him back safe and sound." Excuse me. Excuse me, wow. The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. His father did go out to talk to this one. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. Then when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." "My son," the father said, "you are always with me. I never had to do anything for you. You're always here. And everything I have is yours." He's already divided up the estate. The younger son isn't getting back what he lost. I mean, in the sense of he's already spent his part of the estate. Everything the father still has left is going to be the older son's, excuse me. Because the younger son has already gotten his share of the estate, so everything the father has left goes to the older one now. Unless the older one gets mad and leaves. "Everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours," now the brother didn't say, the older brother said, "this son of yours." The father is saying, "No, he's your brother too. Was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." That's the end of the story. We don't know what happened next. Did the older brother go in and be reconciled to his younger brother? Did he stay out in the field and sulk? Did he leave? Did he take his father's share of the inheritance and leave? We don't know. Because in the end, it's up to these people what they're going to do, because they're the older brother in the story. Now, the misapplication here from like the Billy Graham Crusades and the other popular preachings on this passage is that they're casting the younger brother in the role of like the Gentiles, which really isn't the case here. The younger brother would be the people that we talked about at the beginning of this chapter, the tax collectors and the sinners. Okay, the younger brother would be the Jews who were outcasts of society and found themselves on the outside looking in through one method or another. Tax collectors, prostitutes, like whatever. However they ended up on the outer rung, they got there. Like he's not talking about going and preaching the gospel to all nations. So the Billy Graham idea of this referring to like the Gentile nations who are now being welcomed into the kingdom, that's actually not what this is. He's talking here to the Pharisees and the righteous people, the so-called righteous people of Judah and the Jerusalem system, about the tax collector, their fellow countrymen basically, who have become unclean, who have been cast out. He's not talking about the Gentiles here at all, actually. Let's go ahead and stop there for this video.